So it seems like E3's back. They're going to be doing a digital event this year. There is a couple publishers going to be there, and I want to talk about it. But before we get on with the video, definitely hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video. You can always subscribe to the channel for weekly content. And don't forget to go over there on Twitter and follow me at Addict ILP. Without any further ado, let's talk about the fact that E3 is going to be here in some form or fashion this year. Let's get on with it. What's going on, you guys? Gaming Guide here, coming at you for another video. We're going to be talking about E3 today. For the past few years, even before the pandemic, E3 was kind of, losing a lot of people that was normally in it. Sony, for instance, EA left a little bit. But with the pandemic, it looked like it did close the nail on the coffin. And it looked like maybe E3 wouldn't be a thing that would be that much in the future. It looked like when everything kind of calmed down, E3 would be pretty much gone at that point. But today, they did announce that they are coming back this year. What they've been announcing this entire year in terms of having a digital event at E3. But the biggest question is, who is going to show up at this event? Is there going to be any publishers? Is there going to be any developers that give their time and money into this kind of ecosystem, into this industry? Because at the end of the day, I feel like that's the biggest thing that people take away from E3 is, sure, we sit at home, we watch these events, we watch these, these conferences, but it's more about the industry in general, and they're just giving you an insight to what's going on with their game. And it's really about the people that's running the industry. It's really about the people that's covering the industry. And, for a couple years, even before the pandemic, they were even letting the public into E3. And I know a lot of media didn't like that because they felt like it was making their job a lot harder. And it was. I was there the year before that they started selling and letting general public come into E3, because normally up until that point, E3 was just for the industry. It was for the publishers, it was for the developers, it was for the marketing people. It was really a thing where everyone came around the world to one place and they talked about the futures of their companies, how they wanted to collaborate with certain industry people, how they wanted to collaborate with certain influencers, and that's how E3 was. And then I think it was like 2018, they went away from that a little bit. They brought the general public in. They were trying to sell more of E3 to more people than just the publishers, just the developers. A lot of people didn't like the general direction that E3 was going in. But to me, just because I personally didn't like what they were doing, because like I said earlier, it was a lot harder to get around that building. But let's be real here. I feel like because Sony was leaving, because EA was leaving, there was a lot of money that was normally flowing through the ecosystem when it comes to E3 that wasn't there. And they got to make that somehow. Now, do I agree with what they did? No. I feel like there got to be better scenarios. There got to be better solutions. But they did do something that's a middle ground, and I think when they come back that's going to probably adjust. And that's, I feel like, the biggest question is, when E3 is back to a physical event, are they going to let general public in, or is it going to go back to the way it used to be, which is an industry only event? And I think there's a good chance that they go back to an industry only event. Obviously, we're gonna have to see what happens with E3 coming up. And we got to be honest, we have to see how the digital event works. There's summer game events hosted by Jeff Keighley that might show up, so it's hard to tell. E3's never really had competition, and now that Jeff Keighley is in this field openly and he's trying to compete with E3, I'm curious to see how that works. There's a lot of variables going on right now that I feel like we need a little bit more information on, and probably by the end of the year we're going to get more information to see how E3 would be next year. Me personally, I want E3 back. I know a lot of people kind of like the Summer's Game thing last year, and I felt like it was a lot of information just stretched out throughout the year. I want all of my information told in a couple weeks. I don't want to wait months to hear from this person, a month to hear from EA, a month to hear from Ubisoft. I want it all dedicated within a couple weeks. Even at E3, when Sony left, they still tried to show some form of information during that week, because they know that that is a very important thing. Just because they're not part of E3, it does not mean they're going to show something around E3. I felt like E3's time frame was an industry standard. For the most part, every developer and publisher knew that they had to show something about a big game or a big indie game during during this time frame, because that is when pretty much the entire gaming industry, consumers and publishers and developer like, are all looking at E3. They're trying to figure out what the next information's coming out. That's when Microsoft usually announces stuff like new consoles. That's when Sony announces new games such as God of War. And I think that E3 is a very important thing to the industry. And I hope next year maybe Sony comes back. And then, you know, I don't know about EA, but even though EA wasn't part of E3, it's like I said, they always done something around E3's time frame. And they even had EA Play in the facility that E3 was. So, you know, even EA, Sony, they want to participate in the E3 hype, but they don't want to pay for it. I understand that. But let's talk a little bit about the people coming back for this particular E3. E3 2021 will return this June in a digital form, and it has been backed by Nintendo, Xbox, Capcom, Konami, Ubisoft, Take-Two, Warner Brothers. These are really big industry people. Now, there are a lot of people this year that's not joining it. If you notice that Nintendo's on that list, and that's kind of curious that Nintendo's coming back and they're really backing E3, considering the past couple years they were on the show floor, but they didn't have their own like presence when it comes to E3 in forms of like a conference or something. Let's talk about some studios that's not going to be there that's noticeable. Sony, EA, Activision, Blizzard, Sega, Bam Namco, and Square Enix. Obviously, Bethesda doesn't need to be on this list because Microsoft owns Bethesda now. So clearly, Xbox and Bethesda both will be at this event. Now let's go ahead and point out that Square Enix isn't in this. Square Enix is kind of a popular brand right now. They got Outriders that just popped that everyone's talking about, everyone's playing. Final Fantasy VII Remake integrations coming out this year. I think probably what a lot of that has to do is they're going to have their own form of E3. They're going to have their own conference, etc., just kind of like what, you know, EA's probably going to do around that time. And I think the reason that they're not going to be like any huge press conference is because, let's be real here, a lot of their games are exclusive to Sony. At this point, they might as well buy them. That's how bad the relationship is right now with Sony and Square Enix, that a lot of the newer games that Square Enix is working on, they're all PlayStation exclusive. And I think for the most part, they're going to save their games and going to let Sony really demonstrate the new gameplay, etc., coming out. Now, I know that they're going to have their own version this year, probably Final Fantasy 16, you know, maybe an Outriders expansion, but I think for the most part, they're going to keep the majority of their games with Sony, going to let them to really demonstrate what the game can do, what the game looks like. And I think that's okay. Sony paid for those exclusives. Sony deserves that publicity and they deserve that marketing rights to those games. I think E3 coming back is amazing. I know a lot of you don't like E3, and I know a lot of people feel like since Sony left, E3 has lost its shell. Like I said earlier, I've never felt like E3 belongs to one company or belongs to multiple companies. I feel like E3 is a celebration of the entire industry. The fact that when you go to E3, it's not just about the announcements. There's a lot going on behind closed doors that people don't realize. There's meetings going on of games that's going to come out years from now. There's investing meetings. E3 is about the industry. E3 is about getting influencers, podcasters, publishers, developers all together to cover this industry. And I feel like that's what E3's core focus was. Maybe letting the public in definitely put up a sour taste in a lot of people. And especially the fact that they leaked all of every exhibitors there, all the influencers. There was that huge leak that happened with E3. And, you know, I think they paid for that. I think that hopefully they got their security stuff tight. Let's not let that happen again. And I hope that E3 comes back better than ever next year. And, you know, the physical event is where it's at. I hope Sony comes back. I hope Square Enix comes back, because I feel like when it comes to E3, it's an industry move, man. Let's all be together in the same part. I think that's one of the key points to E3 is everyone is in the same location. Every podcaster that's able to get in there, every media outlet like IGN, every developer, publisher, everyone is there. And I think that's one of the key points to E3. But anyway, tell me what you guys think. Do you think E3 is something that you guys would even care about? Put it in the comment section below. If E3 did go away, do you think it would be replaced by something else, kind of like the summer games that Jeff Keighley does? And tell me in the comment section below, if you want E3, what announcement would you want from E3? It doesn't matter if it's Xbox, Nintendo, you know, Warner Brothers, Konami, Capcom, Ubisoft. I just totally listed all the stuff that's on that list. I'm curious what you guys have to say in the comment section below. This is Gaming Addict. I'm going to put the article I read in the description so you can get a little bit more of an insight onto exactly what's going on if you want to read it yourself, because I definitely understand that. But this is Gaming Addict. I'm out of here. Peace.